Night has fallen over the Pacific. The sand still smells of cordite and rain. Somewhere behind the dunes, a flare hisses out, painting the wrecked field hospital in red. A line of Japanese nurses barefoot, exhausted, uniforms torn, shuffle through mud as American boots crunch closer. One Marine shouts, "No talking." His voice slices through the wind like metal on glass. The war is over for them, but nobody's told their hearts yet. They don't have names anymore, just numbers written in chalk across their sleeves. One by one, the women are lined up under a flickering lantern, each handed a scrap of paper that means nothing. A young nurse, barely 22, blinks hard to hide her tears. Her number reads 18. Reports indicate that by the final months of 1945, more than 400 Japanese women were captured across Pacific Islands, most of them medics, clerks, or field nurses. None were trained to fight, yet tonight, under the dripping canvas sky, they're treated like captured soldiers. A sergeant walks past, holding a clipboard. He doesn't look at faces, only the numbers. The women whisper among themselves, wondering if they'll be sent home or somewhere worse. Their breath clouds in the cold air. From far away, a truck engine idles, its headlight beam sliding across the faces like a slow, searching question. The nurse hears someone sob behind her. A voice whispers in Japanese, "We are not soldiers," but no one answers. The chalk scratches on her arm begin to blur with sweat. She wants to wipe it off, but the guard watches her too closely. Suddenly, another officer approaches, holding a small bundle of something metallic in his fist. The faint jingle cuts through the silence. Dog tags, American ones. Each tag gleams under the lantern, stamped with a dead man's name, his blood type, his faith. The sergeant drops them on a table, one by one. "Tomorrow," he says flatly, "you'll wear these." The women glance at each other, confusion turning to dread. The nurse stares at the metal discs, realizing these aren't just tags. They're identities taken from bodies still warm hours ago. And that's where it begins, the order that turns surrender into humiliation. By the way, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and time in the comments, because what happens next will make you question everything about war and dignity. The next morning breaks gray and silent. The sea smells of oil and rust, gulls circling low over the camp. The nurse, number 18, stands in line again, hands trembling behind her back. The same sergeant from last night stomps toward the table, a wooden crate under his arm. When he opens it, metal clinks like a drawer of ghosts. Inside, hundreds of dog tags shimmer in the weak sunlight. Each one carries a dead Marine's name, his blood type, religion, serial number. The sergeant's voice is flat. "Each of you will wear one, around the neck, always visible." The women exchange glances, uncertain if they've misheard the translator. But then he repeats it in Japanese, slowly, cruelly clear. The meaning lands like a slap. A tag is tossed toward the nurse. It spins in the air before hitting her palm. Cold, heavy, American. The name reads J. Donnelly U.S. M.C. She doesn't know who he was, but she can tell by the scratches on the tag that he didn't die easy. Reports from the Pacific War archives note that dog tags were treated as sacred, never removed, never defiled. They carried a man's entire identity on 2 inches of stamped steel, and now these women, once nurses, healers, are ordered to wear them like collars. One Marine laughs under his breath. Another mutters, "Fair trade." The interpreter avoids their eyes. The nurse hesitates. The sergeant steps closer, jaw tight. "Do it." Her fingers loop the chain around her neck. The metal touches her skin, shockingly cold, like the touch of the sea after blood. Around her, the others do the same. 100 tags clinking together. a cruel metallic chorus. She wonders if Donnelly's family will ever know that somewhere across the ocean his name now hangs on a Japanese woman's chest. The thought makes her dizzy. She grips the tag until her knuckles whiten. Later, when the guards march away, one woman whispers, "It feels like wearing his ghost." The nurse doesn't answer. She just keeps staring at the engraved letters, realizing she's been given not freedom, but someone else's death. That night, they'll be lined up again for inspection, every tag checked, every rule enforced. But for now, the sound of metal fills the air, proof that the war hasn't really ended inside anyone's skin. The sun has climbed high, bleaching everything to the color of bone. A whistle pierces the camp air. Inspection time. The women, now silent shadows, form a line outside the barracks. Their new dog tags glint like small knives against their chests. Dust swirls around their bare ankles as guards bark orders. An American lieutenant paces slowly down the row, clipboard in hand. He stops at each woman, grips the tag between two fingers, checks the name, the chain, the position. No words of comfort, just the sound of pens scratching metal into paper. For the nurse wearing J, Donnelly's tag, each touch feels like an invasion. She can smell the soap on the officer's hands, clean, sharp, foreign. He lifts her tag, studies it, and nods. She exhales, but it's not relief. It's surrender in silence. Archival records from the U.S. War Department confirm that over 1,000 photographs of captured personnel were taken for documentation. The lens didn't care about dignity. It wanted order. In those images, POWs stand perfectly still, proof that control had replaced chaos. A camera flashes. The nurse flinches. The white burst burns through her closed eyelids. For a moment, she imagines Donnelly himself staring back through that lens, wondering why a stranger now wears his name. Behind her, a guard mutters, "Looks good. Keep them in line." The lieutenant checks another tag, another face. Every click of the clipboard sounds like a lock turning. When the inspection ends, the sergeant reminds them, "Keep the tags visible at all times. Anyone found without one, discipline." His voice echoes against corrugated metal walls, leaving a chill heavier than the heat. That night, as the camp settles under a pale moon, the nurse lies awake on her cot. The tag rests against her throat, faintly swaying with each breath. The air smells of sweat and kerosene. Around her, others whisper prayers, names of men they never knew, now forced to wear like curses. She turns her head and sees dozens of tiny reflections of the moon on steel, an army of borrowed souls. She closes her eyes, but can't sleep. The tag keeps tapping softly against her collarbone. Tap, 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 like a ghost reminding her. Identity is not something you can take off. And in the darkness, the sound becomes a whisper that will follow her into the night. Night again. The camp has gone quiet, except for the faraway hum of a generator and the restless murmur of women who can't sleep. Inside the barracks, shadows stretch long across the walls. The nurse, still wearing J. Donnelly's tag lies on her cot, eyes open, watching the rafters tremble in the wind. The tag moves when she breathes. Click, clink. Every sound feels amplified in the dark. The chain catches her hair. She tries to ignore it, but the metal has become part of her skin now, an unwanted heartbeat that won't stop echoing. From the bunk beside her, it may comes through the spurs. "What was your man's name?" "We've Hesitats," then answers softly, "J. Donnelly." The name feels strange in her mouth, heavy and foreign. The others whisper their names to Harris, Cole, Thompson, as if reciting the roll call of ghosts. Reports suggest that by the final winter of 1945, most Pacific POW camps rationed less than 2,000 calories per day. The women sleep cold, hungry, wearing the names of men who died with full bellies. A sudden gust slams the tin door. The dog tags jingle, a chorus of lost identities rattling in the dark. The nurse grips hers tightly, trying to still it, but the motion only makes it louder. She wonders if the Marines outside can hear them, the metallic whispers of the enemy they tried to erase. One woman begins humming an old Japanese lullaby, but the tune falters halfway, drowned by the clicking steel. The nurse turns the tag over and over in her fingers. She imagines Donnelly's face. Was he kind? Did he hate her? Was he even real? The engraving feels too sharp to belong to someone soft. Outside, boots crunch closer. A flashlight beam cuts through the wooden cracks. Quiet in there. A guard shouts. The room freezes. The women hold their breath until the light disappears. Then the whisper of metal returns, softer, slower, like waves retreating after a storm. The nurse presses the tag flat against her skin, the chill biting through her thin shirt. His name is cold, she thinks, colder than the air. She closes her eyes, but sleep won't come, because soon that same guard will burst through the door, and the real humiliation will begin under that flashlight's glare. The door slams open so hard that the hinges groan. The beam of a flashlight slices through the dark like a blade, landing squarely on the nurse's face. She jerks upright, half blinded. The guard steps inside, boots thudding on the wooden floor, his breath sharp with tobacco. Who is talking? He growls. No one answers. The only sound is the faint metallic rattle as every woman instinctively grips her dog tag. The light stops on her. The guard squints. Why isn't your tag showing? Her fingers fly to her neck. The chain has slipped under her collar while she slept. She starts to explain, but the words die in her throat. The guard yanks the tag into view and studies it. J. Donnelly. He reads slowly, then looks her straight in the eyes. You trying to forget him? Reports show that in 1940 for U.S. Army Regulation 20, 8 stated every prisoner of war must display visible identification at all times. To them, this wasn't cruelty, it was order. But order can strip a person faster than violence ever could. The nurse whispers, I did not remove it. The interpreter repeats her words, but the sergeant just shakes his head. Rules are rules. His tone is dry, mechanical, like reciting scripture. He makes her stand, hands behind her back. The flashlight's glare makes the tag gleam like a brand. Around her, the other women stay frozen, silent, small. The guard checks the rest of the room, barking orders for everyone to keep their tags outside their shirts. The metallic clinking resumes, louder now, like a rain of steel. When he finally leaves, the door slams again, plunging them into darkness. The nurse sits back down, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. She can still hear his voice, rules are rules. The phrase loops in her mind, hollow but sharp, echoing against the memory of Donnelly's engraved name. For the first time, she realizes these men don't see them as women or even enemies. They see them as symbols to discipline. And every tag is a leash. As dawn begins to seep through the cracks of the barrack wall, she's told to report to the camp office. Her offense, improper display of identification. She tucks the tag under her chin one last time, knowing that the next place she walks into paper, typewriters, ink will decide how much of her identity remains her own. Morning brings no warmth, only the buzzing of flies and the smell of ink. Inside the camp office, everything feels unnaturally clean. Papers stacked in neat rows, typewriter keys clacking like gunfire. The nurse stands at attention, shoulders tense, her tag dangling just above the edge of the desk. Behind it sits an American lieutenant, his uniform pressed, his expression unreadable. The interpreter beside him flips through a small dictionary, searching for words sharp enough to translate humiliation. The sergeant from last night leans against the wall, arms folded, watching like a man ensuring order is served cold. State your name, the officer says. The interpreter hesitates, then answers for her. Number 18, sir. The lieutenant frowns. No, her name. The interpreter repeats the question in Japanese. She swallows hard and whispers it. Her real name feels fragile, like something that might break if spoken too loudly. The officer nods and begins typing. Each clack of the keys seems to nail her identity further into someone else's file. Reports show that during 1945, every POW record was duplicated 3 times, one for the camp, one for the War Department, one for the Red Cross. Paper trails more durable than memory. The officer slides a form across the desk. Sign here. She stares at it. On the top line, her name, but beneath it, stamped in neat black ink, is J. Donnelly U. SMC, serial number 05711. The same serial number is now assigned to her. The interpreter doesn't look up as he says, it is for record, for discipline. Her hand trembles as she signs. The pen scratches her name under a dead man's number. Somewhere outside, a jeep backfires. She jumps, spilling a drop of ink across the paper. The officer sighs, marks completed, and files it away. Just another name, another box checked. The sergeant gestures toward the door. Laundry duty, he says. She can think there. The nurse steps into the heat, the tag still cold on her skin. Behind her, the typewriter starts again, hammering away like it's writing history in real time. In the distance, steam rises from a tent where soap water waits, and other women hum quietly over their washing. That's where she's headed next, and soon even their whispered names will start dissolving in suds. Steam curls through the open flap of the laundry tent, heavy with the sting of soap and rust, the nurse still marked as J. Donnelly rolls up her sleeves and plunges her hands into a tub of gray water. The warmth bites her skin. All around her, the other women work in silence, their chains clinking faintly beneath the hiss of boiling water. The rhythm of scrubbing fills the air cloth against metal basins, water sloshing like slow drums. It almost sounds like music until you listen closer and realize it's exhaustion wearing a rhythm. A corporal enters, clipboard under his arm, checking the laundry count. Reports indicate that a single POW camp processed over 600 uniforms per week, using nearly 90 gallons of water each cycle. For the prisoners, this wasn't labor, it was routine punishment disguised as order. The corporal doesn't speak. He just inspects the soap, slicked uniforms, nods, and leaves. The nurse exhales, wiping her brow. The chain around her neck slips forward, the tag tapping the edge of the metal basin. Click, she stares at it, at the name stamped deep enough to outlast skin. Whose name? Whispers the woman beside her. The nurse hesitates. Donnelly. She answers. The other woman nods slowly, as if she, too, carries someone she's never met. Mine, says Thompson. She murmurs, and then something quiet happens. Each woman begins speaking softly, reciting the names around their necks. One by one, foreign syllables ripple through the tent. Harris, Cole, Bennett, Andrews. It's like a roll call for ghosts. The names swirl in the steam, rising with the scent of soap and sweat. The nurse dips a shirt into the basin. The water turns cloudy, foam circling, like memory refusing to settle. She thinks of Donnelly's family, maybe somewhere in Chicago or Boston, receiving a letter marked missing in action. Do they know that his tag still breathes here, on an island they'll never see? The The sound of a camera shutter breaks the moment. A guard has entered, snapping a photo through the tent's opening. For records, he mutters. The women freeze mid, motion, eyes down. The nurse keeps her hands submerged, as if hiding the name beneath the water will, somehow, make it hers again. But the guard grins, already planning the next step, a photograph session. Tomorrow, the world will see the tag girls. The next morning smells of wet canvas and tension. A sign has been nailed to the laundry tent. Inspection and photo all personnel. The women stand outside in a row, uniforms damp from washing, dog tags polished to a dull gleam. The nurse clutches hers nervously, the chain biting against her neck. A U.S. Army photographer sets up a bulky speed graphic camera on a tripod. The black hood flaps like a vulture's wing in the wind. A corporal beside him checks the angle, makes sure the tags show. He says, voice casual but cold. The women obey. One by one, they straighten their posture, holding still beneath the glare of the late morning sun. The nurse can feel sweat sliding down her spine, pooling under the chain. The tag against her chest feels heavier than any weapon she's ever seen. Historical reports show that the U.S. Signal Corps captured over 80,000 wartime images across the Pacific, each stamped for documentation. Faces became data. Pain became proof. Look here. The photographer calls. The shutter clicks. Flash powder flares white. The nurse blinks, seeing stars. Another click. Another burst. Each one feels like being erased more precisely. A woman down the line flinches, turning her head away. The sergeant barks, face forward. When she hesitates, he slaps her hard across the cheek. The crack echoes through the camp. Nobody moves. The photographer pauses for a second, then keeps shooting. For a moment, the nurse's eyes lock with the lens. She wonders if the man behind it understands what he's capturing, 100 women forced to wear the names of men who killed theirs. But the lens doesn't care. It only sees contrast, composition, control. When the session ends, the photographer lowers the camera and mutters, "History needs proof." Then he walks away. The women stand there, blinded by light, their humiliation now sealed on film that will outlast all of them. As the nurse steps back into the shade of the tent, she feels a strange emptiness, not grief, not anger, just the numb realization that even silence has been documented. Later that night, she'll write her first letter home. But there's one question she can't decide. Does she sign it with her name or Donnelly's? The rain begins just after dusk, thin, cold, and endless. Inside the barracks, the air smells of wet wood and candle smoke. The nurse sits at a rough wooden table, a small Red Cross envelope before her, pencil trembling between her fingers. Tonight, for the first time since capture, they're allowed to write home. A guard watches from the doorway as an interpreter explains. One page, no mention of location, no complaints. Letters will be inspected. His English is stiff, rehearsed. He holds up a blank sheet as if it were a weapon. The nurse stares at the paper for a long time. The words in her head come easily. I am alive. I am cold. I am not myself anymore, but she can't write them. Instead, she copies the template the others use. I am well. I am being treated fairly. Reports from the International Red Cross estimate that only 3 in 10 Japanese POW letters ever reached home. Most were censored or destroyed for security. The rest arrived months too late, ghost voices on paper. She hesitates at the closing line. Normally, she would sign with her name in careful brushstroke letters. But she pauses. The tag resting against her chest feels heavier, its engraved identity demanding space even here. The pencil hovers. Then, almost without thinking, she writes, "Forgive me for this name." She doesn't sign it. She can't. The letter feels like it belongs to two people herself, and the dead Marine she wears like armor. The interpreter collects the envelopes, counting each one. "Good," he says quietly. "Red Cross will deliver." But as he slips hers into the canvas bag, she knows it may never leave this island. The guard nods, dismissing them. Around her, the other women fold into silence, staring at their hands, their unfinished words. The nurse lies awake that night, replaying her letter in her head. The rain taps the roof softly, almost kind. She imagines her mother opening the envelope months from now, her eyes moving over the neat English script, her heart breaking at the wrong name signed below. In the morning, new orders will arrive. A visiting chaplain is coming to encourage morale. And when he sees the tags around their necks, mercy will become a language he can't translate. The following afternoon, the rain stops, leaving the camp washed in a dull, silver light. From afar comes the low rumble of an approaching jeep, an uncommon sound that pulls everyone to attention. Dust rises, boots shuffle, whispers travel fast. A priest, someone murmurs, an American chaplain. He steps out, tall, middle-aged, carrying a small Bible tucked under one arm. His khaki uniform is clean, but his eyes look tired. The kind of tired that's seen too many final prayers. The guards straighten as he passes, nodding respectfully. For the first time in weeks, the word mercy drifts through the air. The women are gathered under the open shelter, standing in rows like shadows in the pale light. The chaplain smiles softly, speaking through an interpreter. "You are safe now," he says. "The war is over. God watches everyone the same." His voice is warm, even kind, but the words slide off like rain on tin. He moves slowly down the line, handing out small New Testaments printed in English and Japanese. When he reaches the nurse, he pauses. His eyes drop to the metal tag, resting against her throat. "J. Donnelly." He stops speaking. His mouth opens slightly, as if about to ask something, then closes again. The silence between them stretches longer than words could fill. Reports indicate that over 700 chaplains served across the Pacific by 1945. Yet fewer than 2% spoke Japanese fluently. Most relied on gestures, halves, miles, bowed heads, the fragile theater of empathy. The chaplain finally nods and says, almost in a whisper, "You keep it. Rules are rules." His voice cracks on the last word. The interpreter doesn't translate it. The nurse just lowers her gaze and clutches the small Bible, its pages still smelling of fresh ink. As the chaplain moves on, she feels a strange flicker inside her chest, not comfort, not forgiveness, but confusion. That moment when a man who preaches mercy looks at injustice and decides silence is safer. That night, she opens the Bible to the inside cover. Someone's handwriting is there, faded pencil marks that read, "Property of U.S. Army Chaplain Corps Pacific." She stares at it for a long time, realizing that even mercy here has an owner. And later, when she finally falls asleep, she dreams of two names, hers and his, merging in the dark, until she can't tell which one wakes her. The night drapes over the camp like heavy cloth. The generator has gone silent, leaving only the faint hiss of the sea and the restless shifting of women on wooden bunks. The nurse clutches the small Bible to her chest, unable to sleep. The dog tag rests against the thin pages, a weight she can't shake off. At some point, she drifts into dreams. Smoke fills the air. She's standing on a beach littered with helmets, boots, and names. The horizon burns red. A voice behind her calls out, "Private Donnelly." She turns, but there's no one there, only waves foaming around her ankles, carrying more dog tags ashore like silverfish. She looks down. Her hands are covered in sand and blood. She screams her own name, but the sound that comes out is his. J. Donnelly, again and again, each time louder, rower, she jolts awake, breath ragged, heart racing. For a second, she can't tell which name still echoes inside her chest. Post-war psychiatric reports estimate that nearly 45% of female POW suffered lasting trauma night terrors, auditory echoes, dissociative guilt, the mind's way of trying to return to a self it no longer recognizes. The nurse presses her palms to her ears, whispering, "It's not me, it's not me." But the tag swings forward, clicking softly against the Bible, as if answering back. She grips the chain, yanking it hard enough to bruise her neck. The metal feels hot, unnaturally so. She gasps and drops it, staring as if it's alive. "Stop," she mutters. "Stop following me." From the cot beside her, another woman stirs. "Bad dream," she whispers. The nurse nods. "He was calling me." The other woman doesn't ask who. They both know there are names in this camp that don't belong to the living anymore. Outside, thunder grumbles far over the sea. Rain begins to patter on the tin roof, slow at first, then steady. Each drop a small percussion against the metal that binds them all. The nurse closes her eyes and whispers her real name once, quietly into the sound. It feels fragile, like trying to keep a candle lit in the wind. Tomorrow she'll do something unthinkable, something that will burn away the silence, and the tag that haunts her every breath. The storm hasn't stopped. Sheets of rain hammer the tin roofs, drowning every other sound in the camp. The nurse moves quietly through the darkness, clutching the chain in her fist. Around her, the others pretend to sleep, eyes half open, breaths held. They've learned that rebellion begins in whispers, not shouts. She slips out through the side flap of the barracks. Cold air slaps her face. The world smells of mud and diesel. In the corner of the yard, a rusted barrel burns low, flames licking wet wood. Guards use it to warm their hands at night. Now it will serve another purpose. The tag dangles from her palm, catching glints of firelight. J. Donnelly, the name that's lived against her skin for weeks. The nurse stares at it, lips trembling. Then she whispers something too soft to be heard, and drops it in. The metal hits the coals with a hiss like a dying breath. For a moment, the chain twists and curls, glowing red. The letters melt into shapelessness, identity liquefying into heat and smoke. She doesn't move until the fire flickers low again. Reports from Pacific POW archives record 14 documented incidents of insubordination. Among female prisoners between 1944 and 1945, each punished swiftly, often cruelly. She knows the risk. Still, for the first time, she feels something fierce flicker in her chest. Not victory, just reclamation. Then a shout slices through the rain. "Hey, what are you doing?" A guard runs toward her, boots splashing mud. She flinches back as he yanks her by the arm, dragging her away from the fire. The barrel tips, sparks scattering across the puddled ground. He curses, dousing it with a bucket of water. Steam erupts, thick, white, furious. The tag. He yells. "Where's the tag?" She says nothing. Smoke clings to her hair, her clothes, her skin. Somewhere under the hissing water, the tag lies melted, unrecognizable. The officer arrives minutes later, eyes blazing. Put her in isolation. He snaps. She burned government property. They drag her toward a concrete cell at the edge of camp, rain pelting her face like needles. But she's smiling barely, faintly, as if the fire still burns somewhere inside her ribs. Because for the first time, she's no longer wearing anyone's name. The cell is smaller than a storeroom, concrete walls sweating moisture. No window, only a rusted vent that sighs with every gust of wind. The nurse sits on the floor, knees to her chest, wrists raw from the rough handling. Somewhere outside, the camp dogs bark at nothing. They've taken everything from her now: shoes, blanket, even the tiny Bible. But without the tag, her neck feels light for the first time. The absence is shocking, almost holy. She touches the empty space where the chain used to hang and lets out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Reports describe isolation cells in Pacific POW camps as 6 by 8 feet, barely enough space to lie flat. Prisoners were given 1 meal a day, a tin cup of rice, a ladle of watery stew. It wasn't meant to feed the body. It was meant to erase the spirit. A guard slides a bowl through the slot. The spoon inside clinks against metal, and for a moment that small sound rips through her nerves. She stares at it, remembering the tag's faint rhythm against her collarbone. Click, clink, but this is different. This is silence pretending to have shape. Hours blur, light never changes. She starts counting her breaths, whispering her name after every 10th one, terrified she might forget it. The sound is small but defiant, echoing off the stone. My name is mine, she murmurs, only mine. One night bleeds into the next. Her reflection stares back at her from a puddle near the wall, hair tangled, lips cracked, eyes brighter than they should be. She lifts her finger and writes her name on the damp concrete, each stroke trembling but sure. Letters forming out of willpower, not ink. When the guards finally open the door, the first thing they see is that name etched faintly on the wall. They shout, order her up, drag her into daylight. She squints, nearly blinded. The world outside feels too wide after so many hours pressed into walls. A Red Cross vehicle waits near the gate, its white emblem glaring against the mud. The war inspectors have arrived for a surprise review. Guards scramble to hide what the storm of shame has left behind. And in that chaos, her small act of defiance, the burned tag, the name on the wall, will meet the eyes of someone who still remembers what rules are supposed to mean. Late morning sunlight cuts through the camp's wire fences as 2 jeeps roll in, each marked with the Red Cross on white. The guards snap to attention, their nervous movements betraying the fear of inspection. The Red Cross officers step out, 1 American, 1 Swiss, clipboards in hand, expressions carved from discipline. The nurse is marched from isolation, thin and pale, her bare feet leaving faint prints in the mud. Her eyes blink against the light. She's not wearing a tag anymore, and that, more than her silence, makes the guards uneasy. The Swiss officer gestures for the interpreter. Why no identification tag? The interpreter hesitates. It was lost in fire. The officer writes something down. His pen moves quickly, precise. Behind him, a photographer raises a small Leica camera, capturing everything: the tents, the faces, the women lined up like faded ghosts. The shutter clicks softly, the sound of accountability trying to keep up with shame. Records from 1945 show that Geneva Convention Article 12 required humane treatment of prisoners, protection from insults, and respect for personal dignity. In practice, those words often stayed ink on paper, rules recited, not remembered. The American inspector steps closer to the nurse. "Your condition?" he asks. The interpreter translates. She answers quietly in Japanese, "I am alive." He nods, then notices the faint mark on her neck, the pale ring where the tag once hung. His jaw tightens. He looks at the guards but says nothing. The silence between their uniforms feels louder than gunfire. The officers move on, taking notes, measuring rations, counting blankets. Every tick of their pens tries to make order out of cruelty. The nurse stands still, Her name, the one she carved on the wall, burning like a secret under her breath. As the inspection ends, the Swiss officer turns once more. His gaze lingers on her, just long enough for her to believe he understands. But he writes nothing about the tag. Later that night, the guards whisper that the war is almost over. Rumors of surrender travel faster than truth. The nurse lies awake, listening to the distant hum of engines, wondering if freedom will feel any different, or if it will just be another name someone else assigns her. Tokyo, years later, rain against glass, traffic humming far below. The nurse stands in a quiet museum hall, now an old woman wrapped in a dark wool coat. Her hair is silver, her posture still straight, her eyes sharp as ever. Before her, inside a glass display case, lies something small and familiar. A corroded dog tag, its chain curled like a question mark. The label beneath it reads, "Recovered Artifact Okinawa, 1945. She leans closer. The letters are faint but still legible. J. Donnelly, SMC, the same name, the same ghost. The tag she thought had melted into nothing somehow survived. Dug up decades later, repatriated across oceans, turned into history again. Reports confirm that more than 100 personal effects were returned to Japan between 1950 and 1970. Photographs, diaries, and identification tags. The war had ended, but its echoes kept washing back ashore. Her reflection hovers over the glass, overlapping with Donnelly's name. For a heartbeat, they look like one person again. She remembers the smell of rain in the camp, the taste of metal in her mouth, the way the tag had burned against her skin before she threw it into the fire. And she realizes something. She didn't destroy it to forget him. She destroyed it to remember herself. Behind her, a young curator explains softly to visitors in English. These artifacts show the humanity on both sides. They tell us war is not about soldiers. It's about names. The words hang in the air like smoke, delicate but true. The old nurse takes a slow breath and reaches into her coat pocket. From it, she pulls out another tag, one she had made years after the war. It's lighter, cleaner, engraved with her own name in Japanese and English. She places it beside Donnelly's glass case, resting it gently on the exhibit ledge. Now, she whispers, "We're even." She turns to leave, her reflection fading from the glass, leaving only two tags side by side, one of death, one of survival. Outside, the city hums a world rebuilt, unaware of the ghosts still hanging from invisible chains. She steps into the drizzle, her own tag warm against her skin, proof that identity can be stolen, burned, rewritten, and still return home.